This is infrared. We're riding the #1 train to the end of the line at 242nd Street, Van Cortlandt Park, so that you don't have to. There's the 242nd Street storage yard for the #1 train. Elevated storage yard and maintenance barn. A parking garage. Pulling into the last stop on this #1 line, 242nd Street, Van Cortlandt Park. Actually, this is almost an historical artifact now. Most of the stations have digital maps. Manhattan. We are at the end of the line. Good. That's helpful. And Cortlandt Park is to our right. So we're at 242nd Street and Broadway, and this is Broadway looking north. Here's the station and, well, sort of Broadway looking south. A little peek at Broadway looking south. There we go. A better view. Traffic backed up on Broadway looking south. This isn't the original stairway, but a recreation of it, I think. The stair treads look too new. So, first view of Van Cortlandt Park, just off the 242nd Street stop of the #1 train. City DOT hard at work resurfacing this part of Broadway. And then this convenience, a restroom, right off the train, right off the subway. Let's get a look at this plaque describing Van Cortlandt Park. 1,146 acres. Okay, read the rest at home. And the resurfacing operation. Well, let's just see how that's going. Right. Let's enter the park. Also, we're at Manhattan College Parkway to the right, going up the hill. Going up the hill takes you to Riverdale and Manhattan College, a great engineering school. Yeah, the secret entrance to Van Cortlandt Park. There's a swimming pool. Again, it's March 29th, Tuesday. It feels like it's in the 20s. So the cool pools message is a little bit lost on us right now. We're heading east. Broadway is the western boundary of Van Cortlandt Park, and we're heading into the park in search of anything in particular. No, let's just walk through the park and see what we find. Can we go wrong by following the paved path? I hope not. Let's look back out at the restroom building and Broadway. By the way, the restrooms are fine there. Sure sign of spring. So soccer fields, again looking north. The cars you see in the distance going left and right. I believe that's the Sawmill Parkway, which is a continuation of the Henry Hudson Parkway. Beyond the city line into Westchester County. Hey, more wildlife. Right, and this is the Van Cortlandt House Museum. So we'll just read a little bit of this. Built in 1748, and the sign says it's the oldest surviving building in the Bronx. So we will walk past here gently, and Major General Josiah Porter we see on the base of his statue. A hungry visitor to the park. How close will he let me get? Okay. A city goose. Not afraid of anything. Not humans, anyway. Continuing to walk east, but wait, this building okay, and it's another restroom and appears to be functioning. Great. 2 restrooms within 10 minutes. What nature? This is the Bronx. That plane overhead just took off from LaGuardia. So we may hear planes overhead if this is the takeoff path every few minutes. Pre-pandemic, we would have heard a plane taking off every 2 minutes. From early morning to late at night. We're going to get our bearings here in a second. We're walking basically south now. Southwest. Let's just go down here to get our bearings. Okay. I believe this is a newly designated, newly signed anyway. I have not seen this before, but let's get a look at this and look at it later. We're going to take this little turn off here. So we're heading east. The cars and trucks you see in the distance are the Deegan Expressway, which is the southern end of the New York Thruway, the southernmost end of Interstate 87. Now, for those of you who ride Metro North, especially on the Hudson line, or those of you who ride Amtrak to Albany along the Hudson line, well, not this portion of the Hudson line, scratch that. All right, just Metro North. Around the 153rd Street Yankees stop, there was the beginning of a branch railroad, the Putnam branch of the New York Central, going back in the early 1900s and maybe until the 50s. There was a Putnam division of the Grand Central, and there was passenger service on it, but that was discontinued. Yield to pedestrians. I am a pedestrian. All right, more wildlife. Anyway, passenger service on that branch was discontinued in the 50s, sometime in the 50s, and the Putnam branch was relegated to infrequent freight service, like 2-3 times a week. And then in the late 70s or early 80s, the Conrail, which had taken over freight service and taken over ownership of the Putnam branch, designated it for abandonment, for discontinuance of service and abandonment. And the remaining freight service was discontinued in the early 1980s. Why am I telling you all this? Because we are going to walk on what, and we have been walking on for the last few hundred feet, but I'm purposely pointing the camera away from it because I want there to be a little bit of a surprise. And so, yes, my pointing the camera skyward is intentional for now. Okay. So, with freight service discontinued in the early 80s, the Parks Department turned this Putnam division into, ta-da, the Putnam Division Rail Trail. And for years, decades, up until very recently, most of the trail within the New York City limits, and this is the southernmost end of the trail, It looked a lot like this. It was difficult to navigate. It would be very difficult to bike over during or after a rainstorm because of the mud that would be created. So this has been designated as the Putnam Rail Trail within Van Cortlandt Park for decades. I first walked it, I think, in 1991. Anyway, here is one of the original railroad bridges. And if we had taken a different path when we first entered the park, we could have walked under it, but we're not going to do that now. Anyway, you can see the frame, if you will, the support structure on this bridge. And here, when I say that the condition of this trail was not very conducive to biking, we still have railroad ties that have been here since the early 1980s. Remember, this is Tuesday, March 29th, 2022. There was a railroad station, a passenger railroad station here. This is what remains of the station platform and canopy. Not much of a canopy. The name of the station, when it was still in service, is going to surprise you. Van Cortlandt Park. Here now is the improved trail, and this is pretty much what we'll find in the condition of the trail going north. You see here's a trailhead. It's now designated part of the Empire Trail System. Let's just quickly look at the Empire State Trail map. Alright, here. It's not really at a scale where we can tell where we are easily. So now the Parks Department calls this the Putnam Greenway at this point. Sign must have, well, that indicates a great deal of cooperation between the state and the city, because the green part of the sign is a standard city parks, city DOT greenway sign, and below it is the Empire Trail, which is the state's logo. Right. Did not know this body of water had a name, or that name, until now. Another former railroad bridge over this pond. This is where we came from a few minutes ago. With the Van Cortlandt house in the distance. Let's follow the railroad trail and see where the Putnam line used to go. when the line was in operation in the late 70s, there were a few customers. There was a flour distributor, flour, Flour, Otto Brem, and you can still see Otto Brem's trucks plowing New York streets today. Safelon, a plastic bag manufacturer, and Stelladoro Bakery, which no longer is located in the city. I don't know where they went. I don't know if they're still baking. But that wasn't enough to make the line profitable, and so freight service was abandoned. For the freight from here had to go down the Putnam branch and then down what is now the High Line, and the Amtrak line that goes under Riverside Park to 72nd Street, to a freight yard at 72nd Street. Here we have, well, this is a surprise in that it's been here for decades, but it has been cleaned up as part of the upgrading of the rail trail. These are what we call the Grand Central Stones. We call them that? Well, I read about them 30 years ago. Again, this was the Putnam branch of the New York Central Railroad, and when the New York Central Railroad was designing Grand Central, the second Grand Central, the one that is still there today, to be built in 1913, they had tested or evaluated a number of different stone samples for eventual use in the exterior of Grand Central. So these are the samples, and again, if you Google Grand Central Stones, Van Cortlandt Park, you should find out more. But wait a minute. As part of upgrading this rail trail, it looks like they put an interpretive sign up. Okay. All right, so there we go. These stone samples date to 1905. Let's get one last look at them. Let's get a look at this little sign. Okay. So I was wrong about the source of funding for cleaning the stones. It was the Van Cortlandt Conservancy, and I don't know what these stones are for, these concrete blocks. I've never noticed them before. Anyway, I think until within the last year, this trail, this portion of the trail, was like that first portion that I showed you. Was just mud, dirt, and railroad ties. And the funding to upgrade it to the condition we see now came from the city's water system and the the city's water customers, the 8 million city residents who get their water from the New York City water system, as part of building a filtration plant for drinking water 10 stories below Van Cortlandt Park, in the southeast corner of the park. We're kind of in the northwest corner, or close to it. But as part of building that filtration plant in Van Cortlandt Park, the city water system paid for $200 million worth of upgrades to many parks in the Bronx, and only in the Bronx, including one of the last items on that $200 million menu, the upgrade of the Van Cortlandt Rail Trail. I'm sorry, of the Putnam Rail Trail. These ladders, danger, keep off ice. That's what the ladders are for. Okay, so we have a sign saying there's a windy path. Because obviously when you look straight ahead, there's no way to tell that it's windy. Let's see what's on to the west of us. Swamp. I thought it was this windy when it was still a railroad. Anyway, railroad cars bound for this branch had to come first from a big freight yard near Albany, Selkirk Yard, on train SENY, a once-a-day train from Selkirk to New York, 72nd Street. And then cars for the Putnam branch were put on a separate train, much smaller train, for the trip up to the branch here, the circuitous trip up to the branch. And in those final years of service in the late 70s, the speeds were restricted to 10 miles an hour. The track was in poor condition and would have required millions in investment in order to even bring it up to a reliable 10 miles an hour. Here is part of a golf course in Van Cortlandt Park. Van Cortlandt Park has 2 golf courses. I think and we have also golf course to the left or west of us. I think it's the same course. I think there's an under or overpass for the golf carts and golfers to get from one side of the course to the other. Let's see. And again, there aren't too many golfers. It's 2:30 on a cold March afternoon. It still feels like the low 30s. Okay. Looks like a stegosaurus is nearby. Railroad ties. Another railroad tie. Yeah, I ought to get a dumpster here. There's been a lot of tree cutting here. Okay, well this This could be the Mosholu Parkway overhead. I'm not sure. I think this utility pole remnant is from when this was an active railroad. And they had passenger trains running, and they had communication lines strung on poles for the length of this branch. Yield to pedestrians. I wonder if these trees pose some particular risk. By the way, I still don't see how golfers get from this side of the course to the other, because now, there is still, all right. All will be revealed eventually. This trail would be nicer if it weren't so crowded. And the Sawmill Parkway in the distance. We continue to head north on the Putnam Rail Trail through Van Cortlandt Park in the Bronx. We're still in the Bronx, but we're getting close to the Westchester County border and the city of Yonkers. I think. right, let's see what this says. It appears to be a trail of some kind. Not as nice a trail as the one we've been on. And let's check our bearings. All right, continuing north on the Putnam Rail Trail in Van Cortlandt Park. So what do we have here? We are at the city line and county line. We're at mile 0, Westchester County. This turns from the Putnam Rail Trail in Van Cortlandt Park to the Westchester County South County Trailway. This improved trail has been pretty much in this condition for approximately the last 25 to 30 years. And we're not going to explore the South County Trailway today. But if you're on a bike, certainly continue north. We'll explore it sometime. And here we have the city welcoming people from Westchester. It wasn't so long ago that those entering the city from Westchester didn't get such a great welcome. If you were on Interstate 87, the Deegan Expressway, or the southern end of the New York Thruway, at the city line dividing Yonkers from the Bronx, the signs for that New York City put up would simply say, "Entering New York City." Now, 50 years later, they say, "Welcome to New York City." And we're heading south, which is where we just came from. We're not doubling back for the entire length of the rail trail, just a little bit. And look, there's another abandoned utility pole. Again, probably for the communications lines that existed when this was an active passenger line. And we're going to take this path. I don't recall if I've ever been on it. It does look like it was created for a path, to be a path. And it does show on Google Maps as a dotted line path, as opposed to the rail trail, which was shown on the map as a solid line. Okay. Alright, so far so good. This replicates what I recall from the map. I don't normally think of this type of hiking available in the city limits. Ooh. Look at this water pipe. Water main. Now this stone structure up here may be part of the original Croton aqueduct, completed in 1842, which brought fresh upstate water to New York City for the first time. I believe that is a remnant of the old Croton aqueduct. Again, this would have been built before 1842. I see a stairway up ahead. That's reassuring that we're still on the path, a path without a name. Huh. I think we're approaching a junction with the Old Croton Aqueduct Trail. This is looking north. I believe this is part of the trail, the Old Croton Aqueduct Trail. So at this point, we're walking over the aqueduct. The aqueduct was built beneath a small embankment. I think you can see. So we're going to follow the sign for the Old Croton Aqueduct Trail. We're not going into the northeast woods. I wonder if this attracts a lot of people on a nice summer weekend afternoon. So the Croton Aqueduct, which was completed in 1842, was, after a few decades, had inadequate capacity to supply the drinking water needs of a continuously growing New York City. So an expanded Croton reservoir system and a new Croton Aqueduct, it was built in 1897, where the original one was built in 1842. And it's still referred to as the New Croton Aqueduct. And again, the 1842 aqueduct continues in the direction we're heading, south through the Bronx, through the Fordham section, where you can walk over a very nicely paved aqueduct path and across the High Bridge to Manhattan, and then to follow the rest of the aqueduct trail, you basically have to go on city streets. But the aqueduct deposited drinking water at the Central Park Reservoir, but not the one that you currently see when you visit Central Park. The one that you currently see is a replacement reservoir, but it's no longer active. But the original reservoir is where the Great Lawn is currently. And then water traveled further south to its end point, a reservoir that took up the entire block or blocks, Fifth Avenue from 40th to 42nd and to 6th Avenue, an area that is now the main branch of the New York Public Library and Bryant Park. So in the interest of full disclosure, I've never walked this section of the old aqueduct path. I've walked numerous times the more northern sections, especially between Tarrytown and Yonkers. I think in the past I had great difficulty finding the Croton Aqueduct path in Van Cortlandt Park, and by great difficulty I mean I failed. It was impossible. So creating that dotted line path that we walked on and having it marked on the map is a great help. I never would have found this otherwise. But having never walked this before, I don't know how much longer it continues before we can exit and find our way home on public transportation. So if your intent was to take the number 1 train to the end of the line and thereby have a nice day in what seems to be the country and a typical hike you could take in the Hudson Valley, well, you're in luck. Now, I don't know exactly what this is. I'm guessing it's a structure related to the aqueduct. But when you walk or cycle on the more northern portions of the aqueduct, you don't see big structures like that. You see much smaller, I think they're ventilation weirs. I don't know what this is. I don't think it's another instance of Grand Central stones. So let's just get a last look at it, and maybe we can find some reference to it somewhere. I don't see any cornerstone with a date either. By the way, when the aqueduct was completed in 1842, the water traveled through it at a speed of only 3 miles an hour. I mean, I think that's only. That's about the pace that we're walking right now. So it would have been possible in former times to race the water to New York, I guess. How would you know that you won? move. All right, the sign indicates that there's an exit for the Deegan Expressway. So this is not the Deegan Expressway. I don't know what it is. Okay, I got a lot of homework to do when I get home. By the way, the number 1 train isn't the only way to get to 242nd Street and Broadway. If you're coming from certain places in Westchester County, including Tarrytown and White Plains, Westchester County B Line bus service provides service to 242nd Street. What is that? Okay, have you noticed, as I have, that there's not a single other hiker here? Huh. To Old Croton Aqueduct Trail south, and yet that heads north. All right. Let's see. It seems counterintuitive, but to get to the trail going south, head north. And to get to the trail going north, head north. All right. I'm going to trust it. I've never seen a Parks Department sign that's wrong. this sure is a funny way of going south. Because we're actually heading kind of northeast. This is the Deegan Expressway, I think. I don't know. Every road looks the same from here. Huh. What do you suppose would happen if we tried to go up there? I don't know. Signpost up ahead. Next stop is the Twilight Zone. All right. Oh, Jerome Avenue and East 233rd Street. That sounds good to me. Now again, why this was called South, I don't know. I'm going to be obsessing about it. Perhaps a better sign would have been 233rd Street and Jerome. Well, you've seen examples of the bird habitat. So, Jerome and 233rd. But it looks like we're back in civilization again. Back on a city street. Let's see, I think this is 233rd. Well, let's just get a look at the Deegan. This is south on the Deegan. Or I-87, or if you prefer, the New York Thruway. But let's find the nearest train home. The nearest train. Period. I do see what looks like Parks Department restroom across the street. Oh, so this is Jerome Avenue. If we walk far enough down Jerome Avenue, we'll hit the number 4 train. And this across the street, kitty corner to us, I believe, is Woodlawn Cemetery. Let's check that out. Let's at least walk on the same side as the cemetery. I guess today's a good day for road work on both sides of Van Cortlandt Park. We're now walking south on Jerome Avenue. We've got Van Cortlandt Park to our right and Woodlawn Cemetery to our left. Why do tractor trailers park across from cemeteries? We've seen this at Greenwood. All right, here we can see a little bit into Woodlawn. I visited Woodlawn once. I highly recommend it. There's a lot of musicians, especially jazz musicians, buried there. Robert Moses' ashes reside there. Yes, Robert Moses. You thought he would have been buried somewhere along the Cross Bronx. There's a Westchester Beeline bus. Just as several Westchester lines begin at 242nd Street, Van Cortlandt Park on the 1, several lines also begin at the end of the line of the number 4 at Woodlawn, which is where we're headed. Woodlawn. It's the name of a subway station and the name of a cemetery. There's also a Woodlawn stop on Metro North on the Harlem line. It stops approximately every half hour on weekdays. And from there you can get to Grand Central in about 25 minutes. Looks like the old Croton Aqueduct Trail used to. Oh. Nice drill. And just remember, as striking as some of these monuments in Woodlawn are, you're only seeing a small fraction of what's here. You really need to plan to spend a couple of hours here inside the cemetery. Nice. So here is a main entrance to Woodlawn. It appears to be open until 4:30. And just inside the main gate to the left, restrooms. And this is the end of the line of the number 4. At Woodlawn Station. And look, a sign explaining infrastructure upgrades. All right, the sign needs to be updated. New mayor, new DDC commissioner, new city council member, new DEP commissioner. Let's just see what amenities are here for people who are just coming off of the number 4 train. Okay. So our very last thing today is I'd explained how the Putnam Rail Trail was funded with a part of $200 million in improvements to Bronx parks funded by city water bills. And that $200 million to upgrade parks was in exchange for the disruption caused by the years of construction it took to build this, which is all we are going to be able to see of the Croton drinking water filtration plant, because the plant extends 10 stories underground. This is the entrance. And again, this is all we're going to be able to see. The water from the Croton system, which is the oldest part of New York City's drinking water system, the part that goes back to 1842, the federal EPA determined that the water needs to be filtered, and hence the building of the Croton filtration plant, which cost a little over $3 billion, like $3.3 billion. So only about 10% of the water that New York City drinks comes from the Croton system. 90% comes from across the Hudson River from the Catskill and Delaware systems, and so far does not need to be filtered. But Croton water does. Okay, let's go up and get our train. Maybe we can see a little bit more of the filtration plant. 2 minutes. Alright. So just as at the Van Cortlandt Park Station, which train is leaving first? This one. This one is leaving first. Alright. So, with one last view, you can see a little bit more of the filtration.
Do you want to save money on your subway ride?
Sure, who doesn't?
If you tap to ride 12 times with the same device or card, starting on a Monday, every ride after that is free for the rest of the week. Learn more at nta.info.
They keep every door except one leaf per car closed to save energy until they're ready to leave, which is right about now. Thanks for joining me. This is Infrared. This is what you've been watching.